Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Gazelle coming in live today for another weekly free workshop on LinkedIn, how to quiet your mind, feel calmer, and enjoy life more. So, this is going to be a weekly drop in call. Anyone is welcome to attend to learn more about how to quiet your mind, feel calmer, and use your mind in a different way to start to access your innate, your inner calm, your inner peace, your inner contentment. That's always going to be the topic of discussion, and then every week we'll have a new topic. So, last week on this call, I went through a big run through of my background and why I talk about what I talk about. So, I'm not going to do that this week. So, if you're curious about who I am, why I talk about this, my background, my education, those types of things, you're welcome to check out my LinkedIn profile. And on the main page, there's a replay recording from last week. And in the first 10 minutes, I go over all that. So you're welcome to check that out if you'd like to learn more about me. But going forward, I'm just going to be diving deep with you all into different topics so that we can go deep right away and I don't have to keep repeating myself. I don't want it to become repetitive. So, welcome everyone. And there are quite a few of you who've RSVP'd. I know some of you will be on live and some of you will be watching the recording. It's all great. I am streaming through a different platform, so I'm not able to see who is in the event. But if you leave comments on LinkedIn, I will be able to see them. And I love for these to be interactive. I love to see your questions and answer them live. So please feel free to drop questions into the comments box. I will stop periodically to ask if there are questions as well. For those of you who are on live, please drop a quick note in the comments and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I would just love to see where everyone's from. I'm from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. So I'm about 4 hours east of Vancouver in the southern interior, where we have beautiful lakes and wineries and vineyards and orchards and mountains and ski resorts and all those things. It's a beautiful place. Beaches, I got a beach down the street. It's a great place. So today I'm going to be diving deep about negative thoughts. This is really top of mind for me. So I would love to share with you what I've seen in my life around negative thinking and why it seems to be so much more prevalent than positive thinking. Why do we seem to think more negative thoughts than positive thoughts? Why we get stuck there, and how to move through them. So that's what we'll be diving into today. And I will be stopping for questions as well in case you have any questions about that or anything else about trying to quiet your mind, feel calmer, feel more peaceful, feel content, and being your best self from that space. So before I jump in, I want to encourage you while you're watching this live or on the replay to use deep listening. So, what do I mean by deep listening? I know it's during the workday. And so, for those of you who are watching, I really appreciate your time. If possible, if you're able to give this your full attention for deep listening, that would be wonderful. Closing down tabs, putting your phone maybe upside down if you can, just giving this your full attention. If not, if you're multitasking and you're listening during your workday, that's great too. But deep listening is listening with nothing on your mind. So listening, one metaphor I love from one of my mentors, Michael Neal, is listening like you're a rock with ears. So just nothing going on up there. We're not listening to analyze. We're not listening to compare, not listening to think about something in the past that this sounds like or something you already know. It's listening with a beginner's mind, listening with your full attention. And when you're doing that, you're also listening for a feeling. So your quiet mind, your calm and peaceful center comes through on a nice feeling. It doesn't come through in your thinking. And we often try to think ourselves there. We try to think ourselves into feeling calm, peaceful, content. We think ourselves into our goals and our past and our future. But your quiet mind doesn't come through by trying to think about it and figure it out. It actually comes through by thinking less, so listening with nothing on your mind and listening for a feeling. So noticing if you're experiencing any sensations or feelings as you're listening to this and as I'm talking, just being open-minded. I see that's a pun. Open-minded, nothing on your mind as you listen to this. Yeah, just give it a try. See what happens. Okay, wonderful. So I'm Tracey Gazelle, if we haven't met yet. So I work as a coach, I work as a consultant. I'm the founder of CQ, which is Calm Quotient Training. So I work one on one with executives, I lead group trainings, and I'm also leading corporate trainings to help anyone and everyone access their calm center. Because when you access your own calm center, your peace, your well being inside, from there, we get to be our best self. No matter how busy life is outside of us, no matter how stressful, overwhelmed, or chaotic, you always have that space inside you can access. And from there, it's your own well being that you can fill up with and shift the rest of your life, your workplace, your relationships, your home life. Everything shifts when you decide to change from the inside out and you make that shift for yourself. So, thanks for being here with me today. So, let's get into negative thoughts. So, what are negative thoughts? Well, of course, they're focused on what is going wrong or what could go wrong. And I see this so much in my life that a lot of my thoughts, a lot of my thinking, and I say this a lot, but neuroscience estimates that we think from 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day. It's a lot of thoughts. A lot I've noticed my thinking is around what isn't working, what needs to be fixed, what hasn't happened yet, what's wrong. For example, I noticed this with my house. So I have a tendency to walk through my home and notice what I haven't renovated yet, what I haven't fixed yet, what needs to be done, what hasn't happened yet. So we can do this with our house, we can do this with our relationships, with our children, with the world, politics, the news, the economy, you name it. It's easy to see what's going wrong, what needs to be fixed. And over time, as we continue to focus on those thoughts of what's going wrong, it becomes heavier and heavier, and it can really fill up our head. And we don't even notice sometimes how much we're thinking about what's going wrong. And there's an evolutionary explanation for this, evolutionary psychology. It's pretty interesting. Back in the caveman days, so if a caveman is walking down a path and they happen to miss that there is, say, a saber-toothed tiger hiding in the bushes, right? If they miss that and that saber-toothed tiger jumps on them, pounces on them, it's not going to end right or end well. But if that same caveman is walking on the path and misses berries on a bush, that is not as big of a consequence, right? So that being, if the saber-tooth tiger is a negative thing that could happen versus the berries that are a positive thing that can happen. So over time, over hundreds of thousands of years, our brains became hardwired to look for negative things that could happen, to anticipate negative circumstances. And it is a basis for survival because if you miss the saber-tooth tiger, it's a much bigger deal than missing the berries, right? Than missing the positive outcome. So over time, our brains have developed to be this way where we're constantly looking around, trying to anticipate what could go wrong, trying to plan for it in case it does go wrong and look for problems and be focused on the negative a lot. This is just how we're wired. If you find you do this a lot in your life, know that you're not alone. It's part of being human. It's how we're wired. But the good news is that you can start to shift that. So the first step is noticing that it's even happening in the first place. Noticing that, just noticing the quality of your thoughts, right? So this is the mindfulness piece. This is starting to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who's noticing your thoughts. So starting to put yourself into that third person point of view as the one who is noticing your thinking. And that's a really big first step because then you go from being caught up in your thoughts to taking a step back and simply noticing what you're thinking about. It sounds simple, but it's a little more, it's a big deal, right? It's a big shift can happen then. And as you start to do that, as you start to step back and realize that you are the one who is noticing your thoughts, then you can start to pick and choose which thoughts you want to listen to, which thoughts you want to act on, because not every thought you think is true, and you don't have to act on every thought. Most of our thoughts are habits. They're things that we've been thinking over and over and over for our life since childhood. I believe it's 60% is the estimated amount of thinking or thoughts that are recycled from the previous day. So I said 50 to 70,000 Thoughts per day, 60% of those are estimated to be repeats from the day before, the day before, the day before. So it's really just becomes like this repetitive record happening in our mind. So the first step is noticing your thoughts, noticing um, what you're focusing on, what your thoughts are about. Are they a lot about what needs to happen, what you're working on, what needs to be fixed? And if that's the case, just noticing without judgment, not being hard on yourself. We all do it. We're all human beings. Just noticing. Another way to notice is noticing how you're feeling, because we're all feeling our thinking. Most of us assume that we're like how we're feeling for the day is a mirror, a representation of what's happening in the world around us. But it's actually the opposite is true. It's actually we're feeling our thinking. So whatever we're thinking about is how we're feeling. So if we're thinking a lot about what hasn't happened yet or what's going wrong or like the world's right now, the news, everything that's blowing up, the elections, that's my big topic right now. There's big federal elections happening in the US and Canada this year. So if you're thinking a lot about what's going wrong, what could happen, you're probably feeling it because we're feeling our thinking. So you might be feeling kind of down or tired or mentally drained or exhausted or sluggish or stressed, overwhelmed, all those things. So however you're feeling is a clue of the thoughts that you're thinking. And again, it's all good. Just simply noticing is a huge first step. Without judgment is really, really important. Just noticing. And from there, if you're ready to make the switch and just try something new, and this doesn't need to be a big thing, this doesn't need to be like daunting, this big giant step that you take. It's just a small micro action step that you can look at as an experiment, because that's really the best way to do this type of work to start to shift from the inside out is looking at it like it's an experiment. So just trying little steps and noticing if you experience any changes, noticing if anything is different. So, this little small action step that you can start to do then as an experiment is starting to shift your focus, starting to introduce new thoughts about what is going right. What is going right in your life right now? It's so easy to see what's going wrong. It's so easy to see and know what we don't want. It's not as easy to state what you do want or what's going right. And it just, again, it just becomes a habit over time that you can shift into. But for today, just take a few moments if you're watching this live or you're watching this on the replay and start with your workplace. What are three things that are going right at work? Just make a note for yourself, mentally write it down, whatever works best for you. But just notice what are three things that are going well, are going right. And when you have your three things, what are three things that are going well, that are going right at home for you right now? What are three good things that you're really happy about at home? Yeah, so just making a note for yourself. You can write it down if it feels good. Even writing it down on a post-it note and leaving it around your desk can be helpful too. It's just a reminder of what's going right. It's starting to just shift, make those mental shifts of focusing on what's going right. It sounds simple, but it needs to be intentional. It's not something that we tend to focus on, again, because of that hard wiring that we're so used to in our brain. That's always focusing on the negative stuff. So, what is going right? And it's something Sydney Banks said that I love, that it's as if you've been looking west your whole life, and then one day you just realize you can look east. One day you recognize, oh, I was focusing on everything that was wrong or hasn't happened yet, but wow, there is so many good things happening in my life right now that I'm so grateful for. So for me, for my example of my house, looking around at the renovations and things that need to be done and da da da, I started to shift when I started to look around and say, wow, we're so lucky to live in the home that we have. Like, wow, our family, we're steps from the beach where we live, and we're central. We get to ride our bikes everywhere. And we have such a big backyard to be right in the middle of the city. We're so lucky. And I just started to look around and notice all the amazing things that I had to be grateful for about our home. Suddenly, my experience completely shifted, and I just saw everything differently. Nothing had changed. That list of renovations wasn't done yet. We'll get there. Nothing on the outside changed, but I shifted inside and I saw the same things differently just by focusing on what was going right. So I'm going to pause there and just see if there's any questions for those of you who are watching live. And if you're watching on the replay recording, I still see your comments and I can still answer them after the fact. So if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to drop a question in the comments about this. I'd be happy to help. And yeah, that's the first step. And some people call this the practice of gratitude, which is really big in mindfulness exercises, really big in the self-help community these days. But it is for good reason because it does create that first spark, that first shift towards um, seeing things differently, seeing the same circumstances differently. And it does lift you up. It does just help things, your daily life to feel just different, even though nothing changes on the outside. Wonderful. So I do have a question from last week that I wanted to revisit. It's a different topic. It's more based on what we were speaking about last week. But I didn't have time enough to answer. So I'm going to jump into it now. I think it was Tom that asked this question. It might have been someone else, Rob, maybe. It was, how do you think about what you need to think about in a way that is not productive? And so last week we were talking about that there's two different ways to use your mind. So totally changing gears on you here now, by the way. So there's two ways to use your mind. So there's the way that most of us know to do, we grew up doing, which is just thinking, 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 having the looping thoughts, trying to figure everything out, trying to really plan and analyze and stay on top of everything. But what happens often with that is there's no off switch. So we get home from work at the end of the day and everything's still running, racing, and it's just really hard to turn it off. And then it can impact our ability to be present and enjoy our time away from work and our sleep and all kinds of things and feeling calm. So there are two different ways. So that's the first way most people do and live from is thoughts, running, 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 running. The other way to live from is from that space of a quiet mind, from feeling calm, from recognizing that that's always inside of you. So we are always this quiet mind. It's our natural state. It's who we really are. And then from that quiet mind, we have thoughts. So if you can imagine, your quiet mind is the background always to your experience. It's always the background. And then in the foreground are our thinking thoughts. And so at any time, you can let go of your thinking and sink back into your quiet mind because it's always present. I know for myself, I always assumed that I had to go find it. Like I had to do all this training and read all these books and learn from all these mentors. And those are things I've done. Or maybe travel and, tick off all these boxes to find my quiet mind that was somewhere outside of myself at the end of a long path. But now I see it's inside. It's the space that meditators access when they meditate. It's the space of flow. It's the space of calm, quiet, contentment, peace. It's always, always, always inside of you. It can never be taken away. It can never leave. It can never be broken. It's always there. And so, what I was saying last week then is that it's possible to live from there. It's possible to work from there. It's possible to have a new way of being, a new state from living from that space. And yes, you still have thoughts. We can't control the thoughts coming in, the tens of thousands of thoughts, but we get to choose which ones we act on. We get to choose which ones we believe to be true. If we go back to the topic of negative thinking, a lot of our negative thinking is about ourselves. What's wrong with us, what we haven't done, blah, 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 blah. But when you're sitting in that space of your quiet mind and those negative thoughts come in, those habitual thoughts about yourself, I experience it. I'm pretty sure every single human experiences it. You get to choose, well, wait, no, that's not true. No, that's an old thought. That's a thought that I've been thinking since a kid, but I don't have to believe that anymore. I don't have to give that any airspace. So, from that space of your quiet mind, that settled, quiet space, you get to choose which thoughts come in that you're going to listen to because you don't have to listen to them all. I would not recommend listening to them all. If we're having 70,000 thoughts per day, I don't know about you, but I don't want to listen to all those thoughts. That is wild. That would be crazy. but I know it's what a lot of us do. But my point is, you don't have to listen to them. So then I think what this question was about, because I had to clarify it a bit. So, how do you think about what you need to think about in a way that is not productive? And I think the wording, and if you're here, Tom or Rob, and you want to update the wording for me just to clarify, that would be helpful. But the word productive, I just want to clarify that when you are thinking about or facing a situation in your life and you want to do it from the space of your quiet mind instead of from the space of your busy mind, it is actually more productive because you have mental clarity. So let's say you're trying to decide about leaving a job, changing careers, moving to a new city, starting or ending a relationship, one of these big questions. What most of us do is sit and stew about it and try and think about it all and think about all the angles and consider everything and do a lot of heavy cognitive thinking. I don't know if you've noticed this before, though, but the more thinking you do about something, the more inflated a problem gets, the more bigger it seems, and the more angles you realize you haven't considered. And it's hard to think yourself through and fully commit and decide on something when you just keep thinking about it over and over, it becomes bigger and bigger. So I would argue the best thing to do is to sit in your quiet mind for any big decision or small decision. So, and in that way, it's more productive because with a quiet mind, you have less mental noise. You've got clarity. And when you have clarity, when you don't have the monkey mind running through all the analytical thoughts, the pros and cons, and all the things to think about, when you have clarity, you have that knowing, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? That gut knowing, that deep knowing of a common sense answer to what you need to do. It's interesting, there's actually neuroscience that supports gut instincts. Did you know that? It's fascinating. There's actually scientific proof of gut instincts. So they're actually neurons, which are the brain cells, right? There's neurons in the gut, and they're called spindle cells. And they are these giant neurons that travel up the spinal cord to the brain. It's found in us and it's found in large mammals, elephants, gorillas, orcas, maybe, whales, I believe. And it goes up the spinal cord into the part of the brain that does not speak in language, it speaks in hunches. So when you have a gut feeling, a gut instinct, you know something in your gut and it comes through as a hunch, that's because those spindle cells in your gut travel up your spinal cord and go to the part of your brain that speaks in bodily sensations and hunches, not in sentences. So your gut feeling is scientific. It's fascinating. And when we have a quiet mind and we're facing some of these big decisions, we can access that gut knowing and notice those hunches, the yes, no, like my gut says I should do this, my gut says I shouldn't do that. And then we don't have all the mental clutter like, well, wait, what about this? And what about that? And have you thought about this? Have you thought about, and that's when it just starts to run away with you. With a quiet mind, it's just more clear. You have that deep knowing, that gut knowing, it seems like common sense of what you should do. So my long answer to this question, how do you think about what you need to think about in a way that is not productive? So how do you think, and I would reword it then, if this is right, I'm not sure again, but I would reword it as, how would you think about something using a quiet mind? So you would think about something, having a quiet mind by slowing down, letting your thoughts settle till you get to that quiet place. You notice the good feeling that comes through when you're accessing your quiet mind. So you're feeling that grounded, calm, centered, light, carefree feeling coming through. And then when you're in that space, so you know that your mind is settled because you have that nice feeling, From there, you can look at whatever big decision, whatever heavy thinking you're trying to do. You just ask yourself, should I change careers? Should I move cities? I'm wondering if I should end or start a relationship. And then that gut feeling has space to come through, or it even just seems like common sense of what the right answer is. Oh, that's what I should do. Because you put down all the heavy racing, looping thinking. So I hope that makes sense. Those of you that are watching live, drop a note in the comments and let me know how this is landing on you. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're here from last week and you heard that question and now you've heard the answer, I'd love to hear your feedback if that makes sense, or if I even read the question correctly, which I believe I did, but let me know if I need to revise it. We have a few minutes left in our 30 minutes today. So I'd love to hear from you for any final comments or questions. But if not, I can always keep talking because I can talk about this stuff all day. So just to go forward a little bit more about that calm feeling and what that is and what that feels like. So there's so many different words for it, and it's hard to put a word to it because it's kind of beyond language. It's an experience. And some of my clients, so I work with all men, and they often say to me, Tracey, I don't like feelings. You're asking me to look for a nice feeling, but I don't like feelings. And that's fine. This isn't a feeling like it's butterflies and rainbows and lovey-dovey and joy and all those, feelings, emotions. That's more emotions. When I'm talking about a feeling, I'm talking about the space that you're coming from. I'm talking about your state of mind. I'm talking about how you're being, because we all get to choose how we're being. And that's the whole point of this whole conversation, of every conversation that I have. That's the root. We are not at the whim of our circumstances. We are not at the whim of our workplace, our busy family life, or the world at large, of everything that's happening. We don't have to feel a certain way because of what's happening in all those places in our life. We're not at the whim of that. We get to choose how we show up. We get to choose how we're being. We get to choose our state of mind. It's an inside out experience instead of an outside in experience. You have to flip the switch. Peace and calm are not a destination to get to. It's not something that you make time for when you're retired. I mean, you can, but why wait? It's a place to live from now. It's a shift that can happen now for anyone at any time because it's your innate well-being. It's inside of you now. It's inside of every single person. And it comes through on a feeling. So it comes through feeling grounded, centered, calm. I'm going to throw out some words that I've heard other people say: light, grounded, calm, peaceful, carefree, free, easy, content, peaceful. Those are all just some words, but again, it's really difficult to describe. But the whole point then is, once you start to find that feeling for yourself, you become familiar with what it is for you, and then you can start to recognize it, and then you can start to live your life more from that space. You can start your day every day from that space. That's when everything shifts. So if you're interested in hearing more about how this works, I do offer one-on-one coaching. I also am starting up a group coaching program in May, and I am also offering corporate trainings as well to teams, so that employees can learn how to access this space inside. They can find their own mental health, their own well-being. So that way they don't, a lot of people think they have to quit their job to feel better. But I don't know about you, if you've ever quit your job and noticed, you start a new job and you go through the big transition process, but then when everything settles, you kind of feel the same, just in a different job. And so we can show employees how they can access this for themselves so that quitting their job doesn't need to be the answer to finding well being, finding fulfillment, because that's inside of you, to then improve employee engagement and employee retention, empower the employees to feel better with exactly where they're at. So, anyways, if you'd like to hear more about that, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share more. For anyone interested in one-on-one coaching, I do offer a free session to try to just see if you can give it a sample and see if it makes any changes in your life. So that's something that I love to do as well and meet people in my network. So feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn if any of that is of interest to you. Thanks to everyone for watching today, whether live or on the replay. It's been wonderful, and I will be back next week. If you have anything you'd like me to answer on next week's call, send me a private message, and I'd be happy to incorporate that. I know sometimes these are like personal questions people have, but I'll keep it anonymous and address it on the next call. So thanks again, everyone. I'll see you next week. Have a great week, and thanks for being here. Bye for now.